For those of you who are unfamiliar with the work of the WCO, we are an independent intergovernmental organization established in 1952. Our main mission is to enhance the effectiveness and efficiency of customs administrations around the world. We currently have 183 member countries with which together process approximately 98% of global trade. So we're active in a number of areas, but the main one I'm going to be talking about today is our capacity building and technical assistance that we provide to our various training services on a variety of enforcement-related topics, such as wildlife crime, drugs and weapons trafficking, and of course the trafficking in cultural heritage. So our cultural heritage program is relatively new. It wasn't until the WCO's Council, which is our highest governing body, issued a resolution on cultural heritage in 2016. So in the WCO's resolution on the role of customs in preventing the illicit trafficking of cultural objects, the WCO Council acknowledged the threat that looting and the destruction at various cultural heritage sites around the world at the various conflict zones pose to cultural objects and cultural heritage. So echoing the sentiments of UN Security Council resolutions such as resolutions 2199 and 2253, as well as the importance of UNESCO's 1970 Convention prohibiting the prevention of illicit import, export, and transfer of ownership of cultural heritage objects. We recognize the importance of international cooperation in this area, as well as the need to work together with the private sector as well as relevant NGOs and stakeholders in this area. So moreover, as many other forms of illicit trafficking, customs officers are in a unique position as the first line of defense in preventing illicit goods from entering a country, which means that we are in a strong position to make a significant progress in reducing the illicit trade in cultural objects. So this resolution has helped guide our work in preventing trafficking in cultural heritage. And since coming into effect, we have made considerable progress in our cultural heritage program, and I would like to briefly go through some of these areas that we have been active in recent years. So one of the challenges that we face at the WCO when trying to tackle illicit trade overall, and the cultural heritage is no exception here, is that for most of our members, the primary aim of the organization is revenue collection and trade facilitation, particularly in developing countries where a large percentage of national revenue is generated from import duties. So it can be difficult to try to get customs administration to prioritize illicit trafficking, especially cultural heritage, and incorporate this into their national mandates. So as a result, we've been busy developing various tools and training packages which are aimed at first and foremost at awareness raising of the issue, because sadly many administrations, even ones with very distinct and at-risk forms of cultural heritage, do not have the protection of cultural heritage in their mandates. Secondly, we've developed training packages such as our PITCH, this Prevention of Illicit Trade and Cultural Heritage Handbook, to help customs officers more effectively tackle trafficking cultural heritage. So some of the areas we try to train our customs officers in include the importance of developing effective targeting and risk analysis, advice on how to examine and inspect cultural heritage objects, as well as providing guidance on how to question passengers to better understand what goods they're dealing with, and also, most importantly, to put them in touch with useful resources such as subject matter experts like yourselves, as well as access to databases such as Interpol's Stolen Works of Art database. So basically the main goal of our training is to ensure that there is a more unified and efficient response by customs in responding to the different trafficking and cultural heritage objects. As I've seen in the presentations earlier today, many of you are subject matter experts on very specific types of documentary heritage, and as a result, you know all too well that it's not realistic for a frontline customs officer to have even close to the same level of knowledge as you on these variety types of cultural heritage. So that's why it's very important for us to be reliant on helping connect frontline officers with internationally renowned experts in different types of cultural heritage. So, for example, we recently completed a global partnership on cultural heritage goods, which is called Operation Athena 2, which brought together over 100 countries' customs administrations and police agencies to target trafficking cultural heritage over a 2-week period. One of the keys to the success of this partnership was our ability to send images to one another's different agencies and cultural heritage experts while they were crossing the borders, and in order to be able to run them against Interpol's databases and have them reviewed by these subject matter experts who were able to provide frontline officers with real-time or relatively quickly feedback on whether a good needed to be inspected further. So this coordination allowed customs and police to seize a number of stolen goods and open a series of ongoing criminal investigations. In addition to conducting these targeted global operations, we've also set up an ongoing platform for information exchange on various cultural heritage trafficking trends through our secure communication group on cultural heritage called Archeo. So Archeo brings together both customs and police in order to share information and receive feedback and guidance from other countries regarding the trade of suspected cultural goods. We currently have more than 100 users on this platform from more than 50 countries. Another area we try to help our members in is helping them encourage to conduct analysis aimed at identifying and closing the gaps at legislations that they have in their country, as well as trafficking techniques. And this helps us tailor-make our training depending on which country we're delivering it, because this problem is obviously different depending on which region of the world you are, and every country has their own specific issues that they have to address.
Cet office a été créé il y a 45 ans, il est unique en France et dispose d'une réelle expertise en matière de répression contre le trafic des biens culturels. Nous sommes 26, nous faisons partie de la direction centrale de la police judiciaire qui est sous l'autorité du ministère de l'Intérieur. Donc nous sommes policiers et gendarmes et nous sommes dans l'action répressive, clairement. En charge du démantèlement de réseaux criminels, du traitement d'affaires d'envergure, d'affaires sensibles. Nous avons une réelle expérience qui nous permet de lutter contre le trafic, un trafic qui est considéré comme peut-être le 3e au monde en termes de chiffre d'affaires. Alors l'activité du service, elle s'axe autour de 4 points principaux, on va dire. Je viens de dire qu'on faisait de la répression, mais on fait aussi de la prévention. C'est pas l'activité principale du service. Mais on en fait. On fait de la sensibilisation régulièrement auprès des services de l'État, ministère de la Culture, les institutions, les musées. Auprès des professionnels du marché de l'art, on exerce un pouvoir de police qui est préventif, avec un contrôle de la traçabilité des pièces, de la réglementation, voir s'ils respectent leurs obligations. On le fait en amont de constatation d'infraction. Au-delà de cette prévention, nous faisons aussi de la formation. Grâce à des stages spécialisés organisés sur chaque année au profit d'enquêteurs français, mais aussi d'enquêteurs du monde entier. L'OCBAC intervient dans la formation continue des magistrats français. Nous intervenons aussi au niveau d'institutions. Alors, je vais parler ici d'institutions comme l'ENSIB ou des écoles du patrimoine où nous dispensons une certaine formation de sensibilisation pour éviter pour prévenir de certaines erreurs qui peuvent être facilement empêchées, des fois même sans vraiment beaucoup de moyens, juste avec une certaine logique, la logique qui est la nôtre, la logique policière. Voilà. Notre activité principale, c'est la répression au travers d'enquêtes d'initiative et d'enquêtes sur instruction du magistrat. Nous avons 3 groupes d'enquête. 15 enquêteurs, donc 3 groupes de 5 enquêteurs finalement, assistés d'un groupe de documentation opérationnelle, de renseignement et d'analyse, qui gère les bases de données comme TREMA, c'est la base des objets volés ou abusés française, mais aussi qui alimente la base de données Interpol Psyché. L'Office s'appuie sur un réseau d'une 30aine d'enquêteurs français sur le territoire national. On a une compétence nationale et internationale, bien sûr, quand les autorités nous acceptent. mais nous appuyons aussi sur le territoire national sur un réseau de correspondants, que nous formons régulièrement. Enfin, et bien sûr, en tant qu'office central français, nous pratiquons la coopération internationale. Nous la pratiquons de différentes façons. Les enquêteurs de l'OCBC interviennent à l'occasion d'investigations à l'international, par le biais de coopération judiciaire, de demandes d'entraide pénale internationale. Ça, c'est la coopération de justice classique. Nous intervenons, bien sûr, dans des séminaires, dans des rassemblements, dans des réunions qui nous permettent de rayonner, de prendre de l'information, de dispenser certaines informations. Nous participons avec Europol à des actions d'envergure au niveau européen. Et concernant le trafic des biens culturels, nous sommes le point d'entrée unique Interpol. Alors la compétence d'attribution de l'OCBC, qu'est-ce que nous faisons concrètement ? Historiquement, le service était chargé de la répression du vol et du recel de biens culturels de toute nature, toute époque, ayant une valeur artistique, une valeur historique, rattachant ces biens au patrimoine national ou international. Le contentieux a beaucoup évolué. De la fin du XXe à aujourd'hui, les vols ont diminué de 6 fois environ, divisé par 6, passant d'environ 6000 objets volés, alors quand je dis objets, c'est biens culturels classés, biens culturels catégorisés en tant que tels, à environ 1000-1500 objets volés. Donc ça, c'est le résultat déjà de la prévention, d'une synergie avec le ministère de la Culture aussi, j'en parlerai un petit peu après. La prévention, la répression, puisque quand on casse quelques réseaux de recel, on fait mal aux trafiquants, ça c'est certain. Donc le vol les vols, en tout cas constatés, je parle pour la France, ont grandement diminué. Donc nous nous sommes orientés aussi vers une matière plus financière, la délinquance astucieuse, le faux aussi en archéologie, en antiquité, hein, le faux artistique, mais également et surtout le blanchiment. Donc le blanchiment, on peut directement le relier quelque part au troisième point qui constitue notre action, notre attribution, on va dire, en enquête pénale. Il s'agit du pillage, de la lutte contre le pillage, contre le trafic des biens culturels et des biens archéologiques. Donc ça fait des années qu'on lutte contre le trafic des biens archéologiques. Mais ça, on va dire que ça fait 4-5 ans qu'on essaye d'accentuer cette lutte, et notamment pour les biens archéologiques en provenance de zones de conflit. C'est très important pour nous, c'est ce qu'on appelle communément les antiquités du sang, et trafics qui sont susceptibles de financer le terrorisme. Donc je dis susceptible parce que le lien est jamais évident à faire en enquête, car l'enquête doit être absolument objective. On doit partir d'un bien culturel et on doit remonter à la source jusqu'au jour où elle a été pillée, à l'endroit où elle a été pillée, à l'instant où elle a été pillée. Donc c'est très difficile à démontrer dans une enquête. Alors la particularité de l'action de l'OCBC, c'est qu'on a une action transversale. On ne se contente pas de faire du répressif, de la prévention, de l'information. On travaille avec différentes institutions. Nous avons 2 officiers de police qui sont détachés à la mission sûreté du ministère de la Culture. Mission sûreté qui réalise des audits de sécurité, de sûreté, qui rend des recommandations. Donc c'est aussi pour ça que je vous disais que les vols en France ont beaucoup diminué. Cela permet de prévenir des actes de vandalisme et de malveillance. Nous avons un officier de police aussi détaché au sein du Conseil des ventes volontaires. Donc c'est l'organe qui s'occupe de réguler le marché des ventes volontaires, les grandes maisons de vente, qui est censé contrôler un peu ces principes de fonctionnement, et qui est dirigé, ce Conseil des ventes volontaires, par un magistrat français. Il peut faire des signalements au service de police afin qu'on diligente des enquêtes. Et bien sûr, nous collaborons avec différents services d'État. Alors, les douanes, bien sûr. Les douanes qui sont attachées aux finances publiques. Nous avons aussi des officiers de liaison détachés, des inspecteurs des impôts qui nous permettent d'obtenir beaucoup de traçabilité, des inspecteurs des douanes qui nous permettent d'avoir directement des renseignements en provenance des bases des douanes. Et peut-être pour répondre à votre question aussi à mon niveau, les douaniers sont souvent amenés à nous appeler. Alors eux, quand ils sont dans leur champ de compétences, c'est-à-dire la régulation du trafic de flux, ils ont une infraction douanière qui consiste en général à relever qu'il y a un problème sur une importation illicite, une exportation illicite par rapport à un certificat ou une autorisation qui n'existe pas au moment où ils font le contrôle. Donc ils relèvent purement et simplement le délit douanier, bien sûr, ils ne font pas que ça. Hein. Ils contrôlent les flux, mais quand il arrive que ce bien éventuellement puisse être un faux, bon, ils vont venir vers nous pour voir vers quel expert, puisqu'on travaille avec des experts, on a une contractuelle aussi, j'ai oublié d'en parler, mais une contractuelle archéologue détachée au service, enfin qui travaille au service, qui est contractuelle, qui nous oriente dans nos investigations. Et il arrive que nous nous co-saisissions avec les douanes, les services judiciaires des douanes, afin de mener des enquêtes de concert. Donc ça arrive régulièrement. Nous travaillons avec la communauté de la culture, vous l'avez compris, les archéologues qui nous ont permis et qui nous permettent de faire des affaires d'initiative. Sans eux, on n'y arriverait pas. C'est justement la synergie de tous ces intervenants qui permet à un moment donné, nous à notre niveau, de faire des vérifications, eux à leur niveau de détecter des objets, les douanes à leur niveau avec un certain contrôle de flux qu'on ne peut pas opérer en tant que policier. C'est comme ça qu'on arrive à lutter contre le trafic des biens culturels depuis quelques années maintenant.
I'd like to highlight what I think is a rather bright spot actually in the municipal or national legal landscape, and this is something I'm researching right now. It is a very recent law in Palestine. So it is a law that came into force 3rd of June 2018, and it's law number 11, 2018, concerning cultural heritage. So I'd like to speak about that very briefly if I can. It replaces the law of antiquities in Palestine, which was article number 51, 1966. And actually the Ramallah office, represented here today, I know, of UNESCO, carried on a consultation for about 2 years with members of society, civil society, and experts in drafting this legislation. So I see law as necessary, but not sufficient. In many ways, what you all are doing is much more important, but it is a tool in the arsenal to preservation and protection of cultural heritage, including documentary. So I'm not gainsaying international instruments, 1970 UNESCO, 1995 UNIDROIT, but ultimately the sharp end of the law actually is in national or municipal law, because that's where the enforcement powers are. It's what we call hard law, whereas international law is frequently soft law, not enforceable, not binding on the parties. So I'll just say a word or two about the text, and then I'd like to make 5 points about the text of the law from 2018 from Palestine, and then make a few concluding observations, critical and otherwise, regarding the law. So first thing is the definition of turath, so culture, cultural possessions, cultural artifacts. And interestingly, as some other legislation does, this legislation identifies a year, and there's a presumption that materials from before this year are under protection. That year is 1917, so as we all know, that's the year when Ottoman suzerainty ended and was replaced. That's the year of the Balfour Declaration, British proxies in Palestine. 1917 could be seen as a relatively late, therefore a capacious date, so a sweeping scope of protected cultural heritage under this law. It also is clearly a statement of the historical narrative of Palestine, Palestinian statehood, and identity. As is the case with many national and international laws, it divides up cultural heritage and property into 2 parts, immovable and movable. So in English law, we'd call these realty, interest in land, and personalty. I'll be focusing on the movable, which is part 5 of the law, section 24, which expressly includes documents and archives, since that's the focus of this panel and our session this afternoon. I just would like to very quickly sketch 5 elements from the law itself, from the text, and then conclude with some observations. So first of all is the nature of law as symbolic and hortatory. So it is, as it were, placing an item on the agenda. It is an exercise in raising consciousness and awareness. The law is preceded by a series of recitals or preambles which regard cultural heritage as a valuable right, as the appropriate subject matter of law, so elevating it, as it were, to the grandeur of the law and the importance of national legislation. Secondly, a great deal of the statute is what I would call public law. So what do I mean by public law? I mean it is setting out the rights and duties, obligations of the relevant governmental authorities. So there is a non-exhaustive list of powers and obligations set out principally for the Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities and their competencies. So what you want to avoid is a diffusion of responsibility where it isn't clear within the government who is responsible for cultural heritage and cultural property. The public law aspect then is setting out, again in a non-exhaustive list, what is intra vires and ultra vires, what's inside the powers of and what is outside the powers of the public authorities. So powers of investigation and also powers of prosecution. Thirdly, the regime regarding regulation and registration of cultural property, which is so important. So the issue of licensing. This is building upon work that has been done by the World Heritage Fund, and it's supported by a registry that predated the law of 2018. Fourth point regarding movable property in particular, so including archives, manuscripts, chattels. There are provisions regarding the sale or purchase and the export, as well as the theft or misappropriation of cultural heritage and property, including documentary heritage. Limits on the reasons for which property might be removed from the country, for example, for research purposes. Penalties regarding the dismantling, forging, and counterfeiting of cultural property, and a duty to report new discoveries of cultural property to the police. So fifth and last provision I'd like to highlight in the law is sanctions. So as I say, the importance of the hard law which we have in a national law is everyone within the jurisdiction is, in principle, subject to this law. So that's bracketing out the question of international politics, international relations. Anyone in the territory is subject to sanctions. The law sets out both criminal and civil sanctions, and they are, I would argue, they are proportionate. They are fairly severe. Now, whether that is effective or not, of course, comes down to enforcement. So there are actual sentencing guidelines, so years in prison, custodial sentences, as well as monetary fines that are set out in the 2018 legislation. So just in the last minute or two, I'd like to make some observations and analyses. I'd say that there are some aspects of this law which could certainly serve as a model law elsewhere. So there's quite a lot to recommend this as a piece of legislation. Early to say whether it is efficacious, too early to say, but that is an avenue of future research. There are obviously particular challenges in Palestine regarding access and control of areas as well as capacity. The text of this law, I would argue, establishes or manages to strike a balance between trafficking and UNESCO conventions regarding culture and cultural protection. Some issues I would have liked to have seen more of, and this may be my inadequate knowledge of other aspects of Palestinian law, is what are the penalties regarding aiding breach of these obligations or assisting or attempting to breach these provisions? What is the position regarding corporate liability? So the veil of ignorance regarding a corporation, what are the recourse available to the state in cases like that? How is liability divided up? What are the rules regarding agency? What are the assumptions regarding agency and individual responsibility? Certainly, as we know, cultural property and its preservation are part of the National Development Plan in Palestine. There is even greater need for raising of consciousness due to population pressures and economic need. The draft law, I understand there is a draft law in progress regarding intangible cultural property as well, which has not been the subject of my research. And just to conclude, because I believe I'm out of time, I'd like to say that the law essentially does what we'd want it to do. There may be aspects of it that could be transferred to other jurisdictions and provisions in the organization of the statute which might usefully be exported into other legal systems.
I'm here on behalf of the International Council on Archives. As you mentioned, the International Council started an expert group on theft, trafficking, and tampering of documentary heritage. The headlines of an action plan that has been formulated now by the expert group, and maybe it inspires also you to take part of the group. The first goal of the expert group is raising awareness. Prevention, it has been said already a lot of times, prevention is essential in preventing theft and trafficking. In addition to the fourth group on disaster management, I would like to add one thing, that is human resource management. Disaster and prevent and risk management are very, very important, but most of the thefts are by their own personnel. So people working in the institutions can steal for several reasons, because they love the material or they are in need of money. And if you start with good human resource management, that differs a lot. So that's what I would like to add. The expert group has a concept especially on protected materials, of course, in how to formulate a policy, and gives also recommendations for archival institutions to form a policy on safety and security. And the general rules will be spread out all over the world, because the ICA is an international organization, and the focus of each plan must tailor-made, because we can hear from the organizations here the situation is totally different from the situation in Europe or in Asia or in the United States. So every policy, risk policy or general policy has to be tailor-made. Secondly, you don't have much on a policy if there's no training and education. People working in the institutions have to be trained. That's the second goal of the expert group. There are several initiatives in education and training. For instance, there's a summer school of the Coalition of Research Libraries. They organize a summer school every year on the topic of theft and trafficking. This year, it was the first time also people from archives could attend the summer school. The ICA also wants to organize e-learning models, so everybody over the world can use the model of e-learning. And also the pitch of the WCO is an interesting tool for people in archives or in libraries to get to know the ins and outs on theft and trafficking prevention. Thirdly, if something is missing, you have to know it, and you have to make it public. Institutions are very well, they tend to not to be open about something that's missing, because it means you didn't do your work well. Nevertheless, thefts happen, and you have to be open about it. So what we trying to realize is a database on stolen documentary heritage. And we work together with IFLA and ILAB momentary on, because the ILAB is the International Antiquity Booksellers Organization. They have a site, on their side, a map of stolen books. So it is very important that if you miss something, you have to make it public, because you want it to be found. And if it's in trade, that you can trace it. IFLA, ILAB, ICA on a database, but also on a red list. We are working on a better system of identification, of identifying the description. Let me say, renew the Getty ID to have a better signal link system of documentary heritage being stolen. ICA wants to have, seeks to have partnerships with UNESCO, with WCO, with Interpol, and other sister organizations, but also the market parties, the trade, our trade organizations. Essential part for all of us, wherever you are, is provenance. Provenance information is essential. Coming next year, 2020, there will be a new regulation, an EU regulation, and that is about import of cultural goods. That means that cultural goods coming into the EU have to have all kinds of provenance information with it. So it's essential that legislation of all the countries around Europe is available to know if it's allowed to import the object into Europe. So a worldwide information registration of legislation is essential. It's also essential to develop websites to improve accessibility. In Europe, we have APE, it's a portal of archival institutions. You can find everything on about 7,000 archival institutions on the website. It's a good example. You have to catalog and conserve your manuscripts. Photograph them, digitize them, so that as a preservation, but also as a means of identification. And at last, I said, publicize everything that has been stolen.